Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT video. Today, our Challenger analysts will be diving into one of the dominant builds of the current meta, Glacial Ranger. This will be delving into the early, mid, and late game for the build, as well as talking about core items and champions. But before we begin, don't forget to click on the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social medias. Alright, time to jump on into the video and start off by talking about the core items for Glacial Ranger. Items for this build are usually split between three champions. Twitch and Ashe are the primary carries, and both get a few items, and Taric is the most important frontline champion, so he will be getting the defensive items. Any additional items you have left over can be given to champions like Singed if you're playing the poison variant, or stacking more items for your front line. Zephyr is always versatile to play, though keep in mind, lifting up the enemy front line can cause issues with your backline moving too far forward, so try to use it on enemy backline units. Twitch will work best with carry items like Infinity Edge, Rage Blade, and Last Whisper. Ashe does a ton of damage when given Static Shiv, which can be paired with a Rage Blade, though you can generally just give her one or two Static Shivs, and that's enough. For Taric, you're going to give him defensive items, with the single most important one being Guardian's Angel. This item allows him to cast his ultimate and still have it applied to his team even when he's resurrecting, so it's incredibly important to get. Bramble Vest is another strong item to give him if available. In the early and mid game, the best item carry for this build is Ezreal. Give him any of your carry items and stack defensive items on any warden in the front line. Braum will be a crucial unit for this composition, so you can give him items for Taric later. For both Braum and Ezreal, you will likely want to remake them later in the game, as they're important units for the Glacial Ranger build. After you remake them, you won't need to prioritize any items to give them, but unused defensive items work great for Braum. Alright, let's move on and talk about the core champions of Glacial Ranger. At various stages of the game, what you'll be playing is going to change, but in the end game, the three most important champions are Twitch, Ashe, and Taric. Braum and Ezreal will often be in the final build as well, though it depends on the style of late game Rangers you're playing. In particular, if you're doing Glacial Ranger, then you will end up with Braum, Ezreal, and a fourth Ranger. Before we talk about the late game champions to add in, let's talk about the early and mid game units to play. As mentioned, Ezreal and Braum are essential for this build in the mid game, as they transition incredibly well into late game Rangers. Volibear and Warwick will provide for Glacial and fill the second Ranger spot with any Ranger, though Kindred is great for their ultimate's healing reduction. Olaf is viable as a fourth Glacial and can be a replacement for Warwick. Any Warden will do well with these mid-game champions, though Leona works well as she's often played in the late-game build. Let's move on and talk about additional champions you may add in when you transition into the late game. Amumu, Leona, and Malphite are great to fill in for the build at level 8 to get 4 Warden with Taric and Braum. Leona also works well in the 2 Ranger variant of the build, as it's going to be using Karma, so you get the Lunar trait by playing these 2 units. In the case of 2 Ranger, it's common to run Mystic and Poison with it, so look to grab a second Mystic alongside Karma and Singed with Mundo to get in Poison. Whichever style you wish to play with Glacial Ranger, it's important to keep in mind the front line is often more useful than the back line. Having strong carries is necessary, but without a solid front line, your back line will not have enough time to pop off. Braum and Taric are easily the best champions at staying alive and stalling out the fight, so make sure you're trying to 2-star them as soon as possible. It's time to get into each section of the game, starting with the early game. There isn't a lot that needs to be said about the early game, as you'll be looking to play a strong board with 2-star champions. It does need to be mentioned that being on a win streak and keeping high on health is essential for Glacial Rangers, as the late game of the build can be expensive, and you'll need the health and economy to find those champions. There's a few combinations of early game traits you can play that will be a good way to win streak, or at least not lose too badly, and those are Electric, Warden, and Glacial. Volibear and Ornn can win early rounds quite well, especially when they're paired with another Warden or Glacial. The best trio of champions to look for early on is the 2 Electric units and Braum. Warwick is also okay to play, though he's only useful if you 2-star him. An early Ezreal is also a great way to begin an early win streak. It's fine to use your items early if they can be made into anything useful for Rangers later on. Defensive items in particular are the best to look for if you have an early Braum, especially an item like Bramble Vest, which can hard carry the early and mid game when it's placed on him. Static Shiv and Rage Blade are 2 options to make early for your item carry, with Infinity Edge and Hand of Justice being decent secondary options. Ezreal will be your item carry in this case. Try to keep on a good leveling curve, since finding Braum 2 and Ezreal 2 is highly important for the mid game of this build. Look to level to 5 on round 2-5 and level to 6 on 3-2. Leveling like this also increases your chance of finding an early Ashe or Twitch, which can often be hard to 2-star later in the game. The goal of the early game will be to get 4 Glacial with Electric and Warden as soon as possible. keeping a win streak or staying at a high health will be a lot easier if you're able to find those champions. As we're moving into level 6 on 3-2, it's time to begin talking about the mid game. At this stage of the game, you do want to look for Braum 2 and Ezreal 2, but you don't want to overroll your gold, because getting to level 8 is important for this composition. Make sure to scout at stage 3-1 and see how contested Ezreal is so you can decide if it's worth rolling or not for him. If it's highly contested, try to only roll just enough to upgrade your front line and don't worry about getting Ezreal 2-star. In the case where it's not contested or you already have 2 Ezreals, then you will want to roll down to no lower than 20 gold to try and get him 2-starred. Pick up any other useful upgrades like Volibear 2, Ornn 2, and especially Braum 2. At this stage, you should be finding some 4-cost champions as well, but only hold on to Ashe, Twitch, and Malphite. At level 6, your composition should look like Ezreal, Braum, Volibear, Warwick with Ornn, and a secondary ranger as the last 2 units. Once you have Ezreal 2 and Braum 2, this build should carry you smoothly into stage 4 and 5 without needing too many upgrades. You'll be free to econ up and sit on 50 gold. The 2 timings to look for level 7 are either stage 3-5 or 4-1 after Wolves. If you didn't roll much at level 6 and you're on a good amount of gold by 3-5, meaning above 50 gold, you can level then. Otherwise, just wait till after Wolves to level to 7. Your 7th champion on your board can be anything, though frontline is always welcome in this build, or another ranger if you found an Ashe or Twitch. Karma is another possible addition at this stage to pair with your Ezreal. Try not to roll a lot of gold at level 7 unless you haven't found Ezreal 2 and Braum 2. Otherwise, roll to hit them. From there, you'll be sitting on your gold with the intention of leveling to 8 between stage 4-3 and 5-1. At that point, you'll be moving into the late game. This generally begins around the time most of the lobby is hitting level 8 and looking to transition their builds to the late game. For Glacial Ranger, your build should look something like Ezreal 2, Braum 2, Volibear, Warwick or Olaf, Ornn, and a second ranger. In addition to that, you'll either have another frontline like Malphite, another ranger like Ashe or Twitch, or you'll have Karma. Leveling to 8 depends on your economy and health. High health allows you to slow level to 8, and lower health, generally below 50, means you should level to 8 earlier, around stage 4-3. If you level then, you will want to begin rolling, though not below 10 gold. Look for Ashe 2, Twitch 2, and Taric. Once you find Ashe or Twitch 2, you can look to sell Ezreal to transfer the items over to them. It's a good idea to have been holding on to extra Ezreals to replace the one you're selling. Same with Braum in the case you find Taric. The late game for Ranger can be played in multiple ways. For Glacial Ranger, which is essentially 4 Ranger, 4 Warden, your build will consist of Ashe, Twitch, Ezreal, Varus or Kindred, Braum, Taric, and 2 additional Wardens. This is the most standard style at this stage, but there's a few other variations you can play. If you find Singed, you can look to drop 2 Ranger and play Ranger, Crystal, Poison, Mystic. This build will have the 3 core champions remaining the same, with Ashe, Twitch, and Taric. Mundo and Singed will provide Poison, and you can add in 2 Mystics, with Karma being one of the Mystics. Braum can be kept in as a strong frontline and to keep the 2 Warden buff. Another variation uses Mystic with 4 Ranger and drops 2 Warden. This will be Ashe, Twitch, Ezreal with a 4th Ranger, and Taric plus Braum for your frontline. Karma is again one of the Mystics, and any Mystic can be played as the 8th champion. Whichever style of Ranger you play, it's best to always have at least 2 strong frontline champions. Taric and Braum fill this role the best, so they should always be your goal to have as your frontline. Poison should be played against builds that are spell heavy, like Shadow or Ocean Mage. 4 Ranger, 4 Warden is the preferred base composition to play in the late game, so if you're unsure what's best to play, you can stick with that as your goal. When you level to 9, which will often be sometime in stage 6, you can add any strong splash champion or trait. By far the best option is going to be Crystal Lux, as 4 Crystal is the best defensive trait in the game. Cloud is also useful to play at level 9, otherwise any strong frontline champion will do. Ranger is the strongest late game build when you get all of your important champions 2-starred, so all you need to worry about late game is your positioning. The general positioning for Rangers is simple, as you want your carries in the back and frontline in the front. Try to keep Ashe in a corner when you have Crystal, as she's great bait for assassins and can survive the longest. Taric is going to generally be positioned right in the middle of your front line to hit the most champions with his ultimate. Twitch does work best in the corner to get a good angle for his ultimate, but often that is a bit too risky a positioning, so it's generally best to keep him in the middle of the back row. It's really important to scout and see who has Zephyrs, as getting your carry or Taric disabled can often result in losing the round. A quick tip for your backline is to keep your most important carry, generally Twitch, on your bench right up to when the pre-round is going to end. This will make it harder for opponents to guess where your carry will be. Because of how common frontline Zephyr is, you can look to Quicksilver your Taric or use fodder units to get hit by it instead of him. Overall, this composition is easy to position, so you only have to worry about Zephyrs and Assassins. Alright folks, that's the end of our video on how to play Glacial Rangers. It's a staple build of the meta, especially with how good the mid game is with Ezreal and Braum. If you have any stories to share of games you won with this build, feel free to tell us about it in the comments section below. As always, thank you guys for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next Giant Slayer TFT video.